Hello and welcome to this week's video. A slight break from the usual Marvel, although I suppose the base figure is Marvel, but using Kid Omega body here that I've already stripped all of the paint off of that was on the figure originally. Here's the paints I use for this custom. I'm getting them out of the way now. I get a lot of questions about what paints I use, which is mildly frustrating to me because 99% of the time I show the paints in the video, and people asking that when the paints are in the video kind of just shows me that people aren't watching to what is normally 2 minutes into the video. So I'll get out of the way now and show. There's the matte lacquer I use. Don't use this primer. I had an absolute ball ache of a time with it. Hated it. It kind of ruined the project a bit. But anyway, back to the figure itself. I've covered this figure in a different video before. Not a fan of the face sculpt, although it'll work quite well for this custom. The body's quite good. I do a little modification on the shoulders, or the neck area, I suppose, just to kind of make it a little more accurate to Invincible's proportions. But yeah, we will be modifying that head quite heavily. So just taking a scalpel firstly, I just want to get rid of those glasses. You can use a pair of pliers and just pull them out, but then you're left with the big hole in his nose where they attach. I'm going to be using that to actually fix the nose so that there is no gap in it. I do use a rotary tool with a small sanding bit just to blend the plastic back into the nose shape. And using this paint, I myself don't know what this is. It says flesh something. It's Citadel paint. You know, if you go to a Warhammer paint shop, you'll be able to find it, most likely just by eyeballing it. And you can see it's close enough shade that it kind of blends in. When we've got the yellow around it, you won't really notice. Now fixing that chin, I do a little bit more work off camera just to kind of give him a bit more of like a dimple in the centre of his chin. But yeah, cutting that jawline and chin down massively really helps with even just the overall look of this face anyway. But now onto the hair, just taking a scalpel, cutting away this hair, just so it ends roughly closer to where Invincible's would. This is the sculpting material I'm using today. I kind of flick between what I use. I use green stuff occasionally, giving him a little toupee, and then coming in and actually adding some sculpted detail. I have silicone sculpting tools that I use. You can find them on Amazon for relatively cheap if you just search silicone sculpting tools. Using north of the border strategy of wormy dealies on the side of the face and blending them in on one side, just to create a lip for where the mask edge should be. Using the Miller Putt as well, just to create those knee pads. But yeah, what I'm pointing out here is the shoulders and the fact they're not quite right. So I do take the rotary tool again. And you can see on the right hand side I've removed the material. Left hand side there wasn't any difference. And now I've done it to both. It just kind of flattens his shoulders out a bit more like they are in the show. Also makes his neck look a bit longer because it looks quite short otherwise. Then I'm using the Miller Putt to patch some holes that I made by accident. Also using liquid mask, which is basically just latex. Just on the areas I want to keep skin tone, because it's a lot easier than trying to use tape to mask this area off. And it's a bit more sustainable than blue tack. Obviously blue tack eventually just gets clogged up with paint bits over time. I do have the Spider-Man feet in stock, as well as a lot of other Spider-Man stuff. On my Etsy, the link is in the description below if you're interested in that. But yeah, you can see this matte primer isn't matte. It's glossy, and you can see the black through the grey. You can see the yellow, even with a white airbrush paint underneath, it's still coming out patchy. I wasn't even able to fix that, so around his neck, I've got the same problem. I did have a little bit of white primer when I was doing the head, so the head has come out perfectly. There's no issues paint-wise on that. So yeah, ran out of white paint, or white primer I mean, bought another primer and the primer was absolutely terrible. And it's not just a case of it being grey, because you can see where the Miller Putt was, it's come out fine. It's too transparent. I've had plenty of grey primers that I can do grey, and then a white paint, and then a yellow, and it works fine. This primer is just atrocious at being a primer, basically. The paint didn't stick to it very well. You can also see there from having to do so many coats to try and layer stuff up, I've run into paint rub, which I shouldn't really have had on this figure. So at some point I will take those shoulders off, strip the paint off of them, sand them down, reapply the blue paint, and put it all back together again so that I don't have to worry about the paint scraping off, which you can see there, it's just taking it straight off. Yeah, very disappointed in this primer. It did not prime at all. It was just like a grey top coat. And it had a green tint to it, which is even weirder, which you can kind of see has still come through the yellow. The overall effect of this custom I'm very happy with. The paint application, the application I'm happy with, just the way it has turned out. Colour-wise, I'm not all that happy with. I am aware the blue's a bit dark. The yellow's bang on. I'm also just removing a bit of excess plastic that was scraping up the paint and catching, so I've just removed that so when I do eventually touch up that bit of paint there won't be any more scraping there. But yeah, obviously because this is the Amazing Fantasy body mold, you can get this in a lot of good poses. It's designed to be a Spider-Man body mold, so great articulation in it, just of itself. You can see there's a little black gap coming up there, where I thought I'd extended the body as far back as it would go. Apparently I hadn't. There's black showing up at the disc hinge, which I'm not too bothered about because you're not really going to be looking at it all that much. And again, I can touch that up quite easily. The other downside to having not separated the shoulders before painting, which again is something I should have done, I shouldn't think about it, is the underside's black. But overall, I was going to say very happy. I'm happy with how it looks from afar. I'm not happy with how it looks when you get up close and you see that there's a mottled yellow paint on the front. There's discrepancies between the paint on the neck because there was white milliput and a black body, and the primer didn't match it out, so then the white coat didn't match it out, and that bled through to the yellow. But in general, I'm happy with how I did on this custom. I'm very happy with the sculpt of the hair and the head and everything as well. But thank you so much for watching, and hopefully my next custom will be a little bit more positive.